Hello and welcome to the 61st episode of Inner Defense. 61st, man, Abhishek. 60 episodes.
Way beyond
Yeah,
the half
it's-
century.
Almost 2 months of constant non-stop recording if we did one episode every day without any weekly offs. That's
Yeah.
so. Any thoughts?
Yeah. I mean,
Now you used
now
to it. Now you're used to it.
I don't think it's a big deal. Now that we've started it, it should go
Yeah.
to 100, 150. I
Aram
don't
se,
know. I
aram
don't know. What, But we'll look at maybe bring in some freshness.
Yeah, bring some pressure.
Sometimes I don't know about viewers and listeners. Sometimes I feel maybe I'm too critical
Hmm.
that it gets mundane.
It could get a bit stalier in there because, it's not a news podcast. So after every week after week, it's a bit difficult for us to find topics to talk about, right?
But this is a subject where even if you struggle to find a topic, you end up getting one.
Of course. कुछ ना कुछ तो मिल जाएगा.
And end up getting one, and there's enough to talk about,
Yeah.
isn't it?
There's always a lot to talk about, definitely. Probably because in the fast-paced news cycle, we actually end up missing out on subtle, small news events here and there that actually have I wouldn't say significant role to play, but some role to play in the larger scheme of things that we end up talking about then, and that we might have usually discussed but not really focused on, which I think is something that we'll get to in today's episode. But first, welcome back. You were back from your summer vacation.
Good
how was
break.
it?
Good break. In fact, first day at work after the vacation, and quite a
Anna
hectic
dragged
one.
you to a recording studio.
Recording studio, and it's been a hectic one. Lots of important meetings lined up.
Yes.
I think everybody was waiting that once he's back,
Yeah.
we can suck him as much as possible. So yeah, I mean, part and parcel. It's good. It's good that when you get back from a break and you have a hectic first day, I prefer it that way.
Kind of help you back.
Yeah.
into the groove, yeah.
Otherwise, you can tend to get a little laid back,
Thinking
still in
about
the
it,
holiday
holiday
mood,
mood.
hangover of the holiday.
Yeah.
So if you have to stay on your toes the very first day, now it seems that the vacation was like really long back.
Already.
Yeah.
It's been
So-
6 hours into your day back at work.
Exactly.
But, right. So before we get to our topic, for our listeners and viewers, again, a request like always. Like Abhishek said, we're thinking of introducing some freshness in these episodes of Inner Defense. And if you have any ideas about what we could do, even if it's something as simple as a topic that you'd want us to talk about, subject of the Indian military or any military in the world for that matter, that you think we've not focused on, that you think you'd love to hear from us about, do let us know.
And most importantly, if there's a viewer of ours or a listener of ours, maybe ex-military or has some connection and they have some story to share, which is not known to the world, I think they are most welcome, isn't it?
Definitely.
To come and join us here.
Definitely, for sure. You can reach out to us. Drop a text to us at 8588-966-996 or an email to us at pods@indiaday.com. That's pods@indiaday.com. And, if you just want to leave us a rating, do feel free to do that. You can drop a rating for us on any of the podcast platforms you listen to us on. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, etc. Right, Abhishek. Let's get into our topic. We haven't really discussed this, and just heads up to our listeners and viewers, as usually happens, it has to do something with China. Once again. But nothing to do with any of the recent events, actually. Not much has been happening, really, like I said at the beginning of this episode, in the world of defense. Apart if you want to talk about what happened earlier this week, again involving China, a Chinese fighter jet, the US claimed had flown in front of one of its aircraft. And then I think this morning, the Pentagon released, I don't know if you watched the video.
I read the reports.
You haven't seen the video?
No, I've not seen
you
the
should
video,
see the video. It's actually quite thrilling.
Okay.
You can see the jet kind of flying next to the US Air Force plane, and then suddenly just sweeps in, comes into the front, and then goes to the other
There's
side.
a Chinese fight?
That's what the US claims, Pentagon claims, yeah. What do we talk about? We'll talk about this week of India's borders and the villages along it. We've, I think, briefly in an episode, I remember talking to you about this. And where you'd drawn this very stark comparison between the villages along the Pakistani border or line of control, LOC, and what's usually sort of a bereft sort of a land on the eastern side along the China border. For obvious reasons, you said terrain, and historically, you haven't had much population staying there. The villages are in focus, and they were in focus especially, I think, around a month ago when Home Minister Amit Shah.
I think it was mid-April.
Mid-April, yeah. We'd covered this, by the way. We'd covered him going to Arunachal Pradesh.
Of course.
We'd done that. So he was there in Arunachal, and obviously any Indian leader visiting Arunachal is a big deal.
Yeah, for the Home Minister to be
even
a bigger deal.
So military official, politician, very big deal. It was rightly, by media and everyone else, by lots of strategic observers, rightly seen as a message for China. One of the things he said then, made headlines and caught my attention. I had actually thought about कि इसको बात करेंगे एक बार episode में, but हो नहीं पाया था. Was that he had said a village called Kibitu.
Kibitu. I've been to Kibitu.
Oh, nice. Lovely. Makes this episode even more exciting now. The village known as Kibitu is India's first village and not India's last village. And last year, the government of India launched, came out with in the budget, I think.
It was the
previous budget,
2022.
A scheme was launched to develop or support the development of villages all along the
vibrant villages
project all along the Chinese LSE. Obvious question, but obvious answer. But still, let me just ask it for the sake of everybody. Has to do with China, right? All of this.
Oh, of course. I mean, important to understand a bit of a background here. I think we are a wee bit late in doing something like this, because China has come up with a concept of model villages, is what they call. I, in fact, reported on it extensively when they started work. And 600 of these villages are planned, and most of them have actually come up. Mostly in Arunachal Pradesh, in the frontiers close to Arunachal Pradesh, some in Sikkim, not so many in Ladakh actually, but of course few are there as well. What's the purpose of this? Why did China do this? It's very important to understand. These are nothing but dual use places. So on the face of it, they say that these are places for people to be settled, and people to be settled from mainland China, not just Tibet or what's called TAR, Tibet Autonomous Region. Sounds too good to be true, isn't it?
Yeah.
Why will somebody from mainland China, which is extremely far away from there, leave everything and come and settle here?
Yeah, because if you for our listeners and viewers, just if you want to see, just Google China's population density map, and you'll see what Abhishek is getting at. You'll see the far east is red. There's a almost white, sort of a yellow in between, saying there's no population there, and a thinnish and a little darker yellow towards the northwest, which is the Tibetan region. So what Abhishek is saying is, why would somebody staying far east?
It's bizarre, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's surprising that we've not touched upon this subject, because it's a subject very close to my heart, and I've reported extensively on it.
Achha.
We can share some of the links of the stories as well, I think, along with our podcast. But somehow we missed it. So, as I said, these are nothing but dual use. What you mean by dual use? That they appear to be civilian dwellings, but they are being used by the military. So many of these villages have residential complexes, similar to the ones that you have in NCR actually.
Okay.
Big towers. Of course, not so many quote-unquote homes or places to stay. These obviously are much more in capacity. Those are smaller, but sort of societies where people can live. And just the way you have facilities in these societies, a basketball court, tennis courts, everything that's meant for good living is there. But again, there are no civilians there, but they're being used. So who's using them? They have observation posts. Who uses observation posts? I mean, a civilian setup will not have an observation post or surveillance towers and things like that, isn't it? So it's pretty apparent that what these places are. These are extended cantonments, and they're more sinister than they might appear actually.
Okay.
Because see, everybody knows that there is a deployment of XYZ number of troops in these areas. And the adversary also knows that the other side has this much capacity to hold these many troops. But when you have buildings like these come up, it means you have much more capacity than what actually appears. So you're thinking long term. So that's the background. And you mentioned Kibitu. And this was in 2018 when I visited Kibitu on one of the assignments. And probably one of the earlier, I wouldn't say the first, but definitely one of the earlier model villages had come up just opposite Kibitu.
Okay.
It was called New Tatu Camp.
Achha.
And I remember, piercing through a long-range binocular or whatever device you want to call it, and got a very clear picture of the kind of buildings that had come up there.
Okay.
They were definitely military buildings. It was one building in particular was red in color, looked completely new, nicely painted. Then you could see perfect roads coming up till there. And then you wondered, where are the people? If it's made for civilians, where are they?
Yeah.
I couldn't spot any. Couldn't even spot PLA guys. Of course, they were there somewhere. So that's the background that I can give you. And this has been known to the Indian authorities for a while that this is what China is doing. And finally, a big project is in the making. The first phase is supposed to have 600 plus villages, so it's matching what the Chinese have already done. And for the Home Minister to go there to monitor this has another completely different kind of aspect. One would say that it's a military matter. Why didn't the Defense Minister go? Why not the Army Chief? But this is a project of the Ministry of Home Affairs, which to the outside world is the equivalent of an interior ministry.
So basically, this is an internal matter.
So internal matter.
So,
So that's the kind of messaging that India is giving. That this is not necessarily
it's our own internal thing.
A military matter.
Yeah.
We want to create infrastructure. We want better homes for people. These are remote areas. These are cold places. Tourism is another aspect that they want to touch upon, that people should go there as tourists. I don't know how close are we to sort of open up these places for tourism, considering that when trouble started in Ladakh, places were completely shut for tourists. So that's the catch-22. What's allowed, what's not allowed, because you don't want tourists to be going there and taking pictures of your formations,
Of course.
your movement. So that there is a problem.
Yeah.
In dealing with it. And the other aspect is that when you have a lot of civilian population living in forward locations which could be quote unquote disputed or could come under any kind of a dispute at any point of time, then people living there are evidence. Isn't it? That we have civilians living here. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Chinese at one point of time had grand plans of even claiming places close to Badrinath and Kedarnath.
Yes, we've spoken about
Gangotri. So, that it's just because you had your famous pilgrim sites that you could just tell them, back off. This is now getting too much.
Yeah.
So if you have people living, if you have tourists visiting, it gives you a very strong handle to sort of deal with a situation where the other side begins to claim this as their land.
Yeah.
So I think that's the idea. Definitely many, many years late. But what else? I mean, at least it started. And I hope that it's not just one of those projects which hangs.
Yeah,
which
I
is
get
there
your
on
point, yeah.
paper. It should show some solid results on the ground. How it is going to... See, sanctioning money is not a big deal.
Yeah.
Money will be sanctioned. Construction will start. But how will you get people there? China has not been able to get them there. So you have an example of China failing at it. So what's the blueprint that we have to ensure this doesn't go the way Chinese model villages went? And do we also want to create sort of extended military zones here, or are we serious about civilian?
I was
dwellings?
I was actually going to come to that, but before we talk a bit more about India's project, I still want to talk a bit about China based on what you said. First, and I think many would be wondering this. So why the facade? I mean, without, of course, I really highly respect you as a journalist, but if you as a journalist is able to figure it out so easily, I'm pretty sure people in the intelligences, people in the military have also been able to figure out much more than what a journalist is able to. Exactly what's going on in those model villages, quote unquote. Why the facade? If your opponent is gonna know that these are not actual villages where civilians stay, these are meant for mostly military use, and this is the number of towers, they'll probably be able to make a guesstimate of the amount of number of troops or whatever you'll be able to have in those places. So what's the point of having this
No, but see, your intelligence knows that these things are being used for this. But there might not be an accurate assessment of the capacity of these places.
But my question being, does stuff like this really matter to that level that China would say 600?
No, it's also
of
to
such
keep
places
you guessing. It's to keep you guessing that I'm up to something.
Okay.
So,
that's something.
So it's up to you to decipher. You might get it wrong. So I think I mentioned this several times that the battle with the Chinese, unlike with the Pakistanis, is 90% just playing with the mind. And even when they come for meetings, they come with the sole agenda of confusing you, of playing the victim, of accusing you of a lot of things. There is a very different kind of an aggression. To be the victim and be aggressive is an art. Many people on the streets of Delhi also know it. When we come across these road rage cases, many a time you'll see that the victim, who's actually not the victim but is pretending to be the victim, is the one who's more aggressive to make this claim that I'm the victim.
Right.
Chinese, deal with these situations in a similar manner.
I think that's a good point. I mean, like, for all you know, it really could be just empty places, like empty buildings.
Yeah.
Like India could be making plans, in case a war breaks out,
Many
that's
of
what
them
we'll
are
target.
empty buildings.
And turns out kuch hai nahi wahan pe to.
Many of them are empty buildings, and there's nobody living them. So it's just to play with your mind.
Play with your mind, yeah. That's not a bad strategy, actually.
No, this is they are the masters of it. They've been doing it all throughout. Spy balloons and things like that. And then to say that, we completely deny it, it's not ours. The purpose is solved.
Yeah.
The moment US started saying this is the Chinese spy balloon,
that's true.
I think the purpose was solved. That's exactly what they wanted. They don't want some empirical evidence to be put out. But the fact that US is accusing them of this means they managed to rile them up.
Yeah. That itself is an achievement for them.
Yeah. So this is their modus operandi. This is how they deal with situations. In fact, a very senior military officer, US military officer, was in India a couple of months back, I think. And there was a small gathering of Indian journalists who track geopolitics and defense matters, who were invited for an interaction. And in fact, I specifically asked him, what have you done about the Chinese spy balloon thing, and in your interactions with your Indian counterparts, has there been any discussion on it? So no, Americans are also very good with making these kind of statements.
Yeah, of course.
So they know, what will sell, what will make a headline. Unlike so much in our country most of the times. So I was not sure whether he'll answer this question or not. He answered the question way beyond my expectation. So he said that we have discussed the techniques of how to bring down these spy balloons with Indians and some other friendly nations. He knew what my next question is going to be. That so what are these techniques? Please share in over here. So he said, no, I could only share this much with you. The other is completely classified. It's not for me to speak. If you can try your luck with your officials, whether they are willing to share what we shared with them with you, I'll be happy.
Wow.
So, I mean, we just diverted from the topic, but I don't see it as a diversion. These are all linked things. Yeah. I mean, whenever it's China, it's these kind of games do get into the narrative.
Right. And one more point about these model villages that you mentioned. You've been reporting on this quite extensively, like you said. Since when has this been happening? Because I think for me, it first came on the radar during the LAC, the Ladakh standoff, which is when I think the reports started getting more eyeballs, if I could say that. You had the satellite images of like showing those villages and the kind of structures that present over there. But you seem to suggest in the intro that this has been happening for much longer than that. So since when, and how is it that so far it hasn't really been talked about much in media and public is what I meant.
It's been talked about for the last 5 years or so.
That's what I meant. Yeah. Perhaps in small circles, but hasn't even gotten much limelight. Any reason for that?
No, I mean, I can't pinpoint any one particular reason. It's just that guys like you decide to junk stories that are not part of the trending topics.
Right.
So I think you should ask yourself, what's the reason?
Yeah. No, I don't think
I filed a story for the first time in 2019, which was before Ladakh. And thankfully you had carried it. So I will not blame you for that. But that was on a lighter note. So every time people who are listening to us, you come across this query that why has this slipped public glare, is because, smart, intelligent people who manage the desk decide that leave the story out.
Okay.
Who's interested?
Okay.
Isn't it?
No.
Is that right or wrong?
I will not come back to that right now.
Okay. You've been cornered.
I won't accept that, but no.
Okay.
I don't think so.
So yeah, I mean, there's no particular reason, but it's been happening. As I said, the first time I witnessed myself something like this was in 2018 when I was in Kibitu. From another visit in 2019 to Arunachal. It was October 2019. Yeah, that's when I did a very extensive report on what the plans are, what these villages are, how they are going about it, what Indian intelligence, what Indian authorities know about it. So it's been there for 5-6 years, definitely.
Right. So let's move to the Indian project that was announced during the budget speech last year in 2022. And I think the allocation for that was around 4,800 crore. Not a big sum, but I think enough to start off a project. And I think before we began recording, you said probably the first of its kind project on this scale for that region of the country. So what do you know about this project? Because this entire topic has been kind of off the radar. So I mean, what does it really envision? And I now want to know a bit more about what you said. Are these going to be actual? Is the plan to have actual villages with people living a actual village life or a life there, or is it just going to be like China, another like a sort of a dual use sort of an area where India can use it for military purposes as well?
No, so the idea is to encourage civilians to be part of those places. Not just as just original inhabitants living there, lock, stock and barrel, but also tourism, which I mentioned briefly. And there is big scope for tourism in these places. Military tourism, by the way, is another concept that should be encouraged, I feel.
Military tourism?
Yeah, I mean, people are intrigued to know what does the military do there.
Okay. I definitely want to go for that, actually.
There should be. I mean, there definitely should be something that encourages military history to be showcased to people, to places which have seen some kind of conflict. Like Pengong So. Pengong So post Ladakh, without the military actually terming it military tourism, it has turned into
Actually,
a way.
yes.
In a way, it has turned into some kind of. People want to go and see what is this place where people from two armies, two nuclear powers, come and fight, get involved in a street fight.
I would want to see finger 4 kahan hai, finger 8 kahan
Yeah,
hai. I
so
wanna
isn't
see
it?
that, yeah.
So you will not be able to walk on finger
Of
4,
course.
but it's very clearly visible from the other bank. Very clearly visible. So if there's a guide explaining something like this to you, to a civilian, it's great, isn't it? And these are the places where patrolling is done in the boats and face-offs happen in the boats. Amazing storytelling.
This is the first time I've heard about something like this.
Yeah, I mean, it should be this way.
Has this been discussed or is it
No. That's what I'm saying. That
Oh,
it should.
you should actually talk to you.
Yeah, there's nothing
Bring this up.
wrong. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong.
It's a fantastic idea. I'm not even
There's
yeah, it's a very good
absolutely
idea.
nothing wrong in it. And again, when Ladakh has seen in the 1962 war some deadly, stories of valor. And there's a Dhan Singh Thapa post. What's the history behind it? What's the story? Who was Dhan Singh Thapa? I mean, all these things should be part of some narrative that also not only informs and educates tourists who are coming there, but again gives you some kind of moral ascendancy of holding on to these places.
Yeah.
When your civilian population coming from 1,000 kilometers away gets to know these stories firsthand. Of course, access is a problem in some of these areas because of the weather, because of the road connectivity. So it's not just the villages, it's the overall infrastructure and the change in mindset that you need
Right.
to sort of set a new discourse on what the LAC is.
Right. So what's happened so far? This was 2022 when it was announced. Since then, what do you know? What's happened so far?
Again, very, very sketchy details of what's happened. If we thought that villages will come up overnight, that hasn't happened.
That obviously can't happen. Like you just
that
described.
hasn't happened.
Logistically, it's quite a challenge.
Yeah. I think to start with, which was already happening before, and now it's sort of linked with this project, is roads, bridges. So for people to reach there first, you need a road. Unless you have a road, you can't think of people either going to these places as tourists or people settling down in those areas. And also these model villages, what these means is for the existing local population, amplifying local facilities, ensuring there are schools, there are medical facilities. Right now, a lot of the facilities are done by the army. So to ensure that civil administration has reached these places and people in these places can be self-sufficient is what the objective and the motive is, isn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, having proper roads and better connectivity is the stepping stone. When it comes to connectivity, I hear that a lot of tunneling projects are in the pipeline across several sectors that lead up to the frontier, the Chinese frontier. Now, what does this tunneling do? Tunneling is a very important aspect of movement. You have the Atal Tunnel now, which connects Manali to Leh. That gives you all-weather connectivity. So tunnel ensures that the roads are not closed during the winter months.
Winters. Yeah.
There's a tunnel being planned at Zojila Pass, which is again completely under snow for 3-4 months.
Yeah.
They've brought down that period to about 100 days by using some other techniques to ensure that route clearance is done quicker. So those tunneling projects are as important than the final outcome.
Right.
Only when you have these things in place will you have a vibrant village.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
So I think it's all linked, and it should not be just an exercise for PR. It should go beyond rhetoric.
Right. We'll talk more on that, but first let's take a quick break.
Did rain rob the Titans of a fair chance to win there? second time.
Raj, ifs and buts in sport, you can't see. At the end of the day, the winner is
No,
the
there
winner.
is no ifs and buts. There was rain.
Yeah, as in I'm saying, if there was no rain, would they have won? You never know. You never know. If Mohit Sharma is getting hit by Ambati Rayudu and Ravindra Jadeja, it was not Gujarat Titans' day. I'm not doubting the lack. None of us can doubt the lack of effort from that team. But CSK won the match fair and square. And if you want to give them credit for topping the league table, then give them a Super League, like Indian Super League has the plate, shield, Indian Super League shield, like that. Give them one shield for consolation prize. And one more thing, Raj. A lot of people said, even the IPL rules and regulations says the team that finished on the top of the table should get the trophy if the match wasn't happening.
No, but there's a roundabout way of getting there. They first wait for the match to happen.
Exactly.
Doesn't happen, then you get a
Even if
5 over
the super
shootout.
over, yeah.
Then there's a super over shootout.
even if super over.
None of that is possible,
Yeah.
then the tabletop.
Even in that scenario, I would say CSK would have been robbed of the title because they defeated Gujarat in the qualifier 1 and then came to the final.
Okay.
If you lose qualifier 1, then you're not, you can't get the title.
Okay, you are speaking like a true CSK
No,
fan. I appreciate and respect that. That's all right.
I'm putting logic to it. Raj. You
what
lost
logic?
the qualifier 1.
You saying
You
there are
had
ifs and
another
buts.
chance
What
to
ifs
get to
and
the
buts?
final. Even if the match was completely rained out, the title should have been
There
given to
has been
CSK.
a lot of...
Oh.
There's been
Yeah. Because
Come
they
on,
lost
now.
the qualifier
Come
1.
on.
Welcome back. Abhishek and I are discussing India's big push to develop vibrant villages under a scheme called Vibrant Villages Program along the line of actual control and the China border. The reasons for that we've discussed earlier in the introduction, and I think we've discussed in several episodes previously, but we never really spent time talking just about this one aspect of it. And just before the break, you were talking about how many of these spots are ideal for tourism, but of course you need the infrastructure in place for tourists to be able to go there, and that you said has been happening for a while. Road connectivity, etc., has been happening for a while.
But lot needs to be done.
Lot needs to be done, yeah.
Whenever I've gone to forward areas, by the time you come back, you literally have a broken back.
I was I was just about to come to that. So, ठीक है, like reading about it, कि these are nice places to will be great for tourism. But I want to hear it from somebody who's been there, somebody who's been to both of India's crucial borders, one against Pakistan and one against China. You've also been to Russia and Ukraine last year during the war. And you were pretty close to the fighting zones there, and whatever the border was on that day, I'm not sure how the border works in a war zone, but I'm not saying draw a contrast for us, but first of all, what is it like these areas that we keep hearing about, हाँ tourism करेंगे जाके, but होता क्या है वहाँ पे, like you say back-breaking experience. So what's your experience been like at these places?
So see, as a journalist, I always say that I like to cover military with a human touch. There's no point talking military if you can't bring in the human angle to it. I don't want to be seen as a softie or anything. I don't want to be judged with any kind of view on this. It's very simple that who our military is there for? To defend land of who? Us, people who live there. So unless you understand the human aspect of a military, you will always falter with any kind of analysis that you try to do. And I think militaries are also very conscious of the fact that the civilian population is always on their side, isn't it? You wouldn't want any military wanting to antagonize,
of course,
population in a border area.
Yeah, of course, they're operating from there.
Exactly. So my experience is, as you said, I have noticed this, that the military tries to go out of their way to not just showcase to us as journalists who are storytellers that they share an extremely great rapport with the locals, but it's genuinely there because
it's not a PR exercise, basically, or a photo op.
A bit of it is a PR exercise, but there's too much at stake with the locals.
Right.
See, even in areas where there's counter-terrorism operations happening, let's say in Kashmir. I'm not talking about border areas. I'm just talking about places where the military is functioning to fight insurgency. So in those places, you can have a section of the population that feels antagonized by the actions of the military. But at the end of the day, it's the same people who are informers, who bring critical details of what's happening. So there is somebody that they are befriending, isn't it?
Yeah.
Without that, it's not possible. So there's somebody, whatever means they are using, however they are luring, but there are people who are loyal towards the soldier on the ground. On the LAC, it's a completely different picture. There's no insurgency there. So they don't have any reason per se to be against the Indian state. And one of the best examples that I have in mind was in the Tawang monastery on my way back from Bumla on one of the visits, where little boys, little kids who were being taught Buddhist literature and basically monks of the future, if you can say, Buddhist monks of the future, they started their prayer with the national anthem, Jana Gana Mana.
Wow. Okay.
I think that was a very strong message that Tawang Monastery, China claims as South Tibet, lot of things happening. These are monks, Tibetan monks, singing the national anthem of their own will. Another story that General Rawat, late General Vipin Rawat, had shared with us. It was, in fact, before we were going to Kibitu. Some of us journalists in that 2018 trip. Yeah.
Right.
He had become the chief by then. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's why he was meeting us to just sort of give a debrief. And he happened, if I'm not mistaken, he had also commanded his battalion there.
Okay.
So he shared this great story of how the locals were actually, very, very Indian. I mean, there's supposed to be no reason for us to feel that why they are not. But he was saying that even as an officer, he was unsure speaking to an old man whether he's understanding everything or not. So he was trying to speak in some broken Hindi, a bit of English. So this old man said, Hindi nahi aata kya? So he said, aata hai. So Hindi mein baat karo. So actually people in Arunachal Pradesh speak very good Hindi. I don't know what the reason is. Might not be like Nagaland and Manipur. People do speak Hindi, it's not a problem. But Arunachal, I thought people were really fluent with the Hindi. So what the reason is, I don't know. So yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's the people who matter. And if you can relate with the people through roads, through villages, or whatever, then half the battle is done.
Yeah. Good you talked about the people there and the local population there, because this is one aspect I also wanted to discuss before we end this episode. Ki in this whole redevelopment, the development scheme, of course there's the tourism aspect, which is the most, that's the one that's going to make the most headlines, the one going to sell the most. It's the sexiest aspect of it. But does it also involve, we've heard stories of the impact that the ceasefire violations had on the villages along the LOC. The tensions between India and Pakistan have had along the villages down south, as in like south of the border, the actual border with Pakistan. What about the villages along? So there's one aspect is, of course, you want to develop new places and get some people there. But are there villages over there that have been impacted because of the tensions with China? And is this also a part of this project to kind of ensure the stability of such villages?
Definitely there is. They have been impacted. It has played a big role on their psyche. You often keep reading stories, reports from Ladakh that how grazers are having troubles in taking their sheep, cattle to certain areas because the Chinese are in control of those areas. If these grazers go there, the Chinese have a problem. So it's impacting local human lives It might not be what has happened on LOC where homes have been blown up
Yes.
and people have lost their lives, but it's impacting their daily lives. And grazing, Pashmina wool comes from that kind of one particular kind of sheep, breed of sheep. The Pashmina wool is exported and it's extremely expensive. That's the backbone of the economy of that place. So if those people are having trouble in ensuring food for their sheep, I mean, it's going to impact their lives big time. If those sheep are going to die because they can't graze, there's going to be no Pashmina wool. So all the kind of tensions that we've seen do impact lives of people, and that's the reason why. And that's the reason why a term like vibrant. How does a place become vibrant? It becomes vibrant with people.
Yeah.
Unless you have people there, unless you have movement there, it's not going to be vibrant. So I mean, it's still early days at this ambitious project, but I think it's a right step to have been taken, and it's good that it's been delinked from military planning.
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea. It's not a Ministry of Defense project or a BRO project, Border Roads Organization. It's a Home Ministry project. I think that's a very good message, because if you have civilian infrastructure, you have military infrastructure.
Yeah.
Atal Tunnel
Won't happen without,
is not just for the military.
of course.
It's the primary reason was
for
civilian
civilians.
movement.
Yeah.
When you have a tunnel for civilian movement, of course the military also uses it, and uses it in a very normal way. Again, you see the message that you send, that we've not built this specifically for our needs. We've built it for the needs of our people. So if a road is made in Delhi, nobody questions why is the army going on that road. So it's a road that the Indian state has built.
And that's a very good point. Forget that being a message for the rest of the world. Like someone like me and, people in my circles, for many years when we used to hear about infrastructure projects along the China border, road construction by the BRO, the famed BRO, the immediate thought always was probably for military purposes. Always,
Isn't it?
Never the thought never struck
that I can go there as a tourist.
Exactly. Never thought कि हम भी शायद वहाँ चल सकते कभी. It was always कि must be
It was
tanks
very
transport करना
people who
होगा.
were extremely adventurous were the ones who would venture for these kind of expeditions, bikers.
Yeah,
things
exactly.
like that. But it's changing. See, sometimes an ugly image also has a silver lining. So I'll give you an example. I came across this video on a picture where I think there were two cars, SUVs, which actually drove into the Pangong Lake.
I might have seen that.
Isn't it something to this effect, where they're trying to drive into the Pangong Lake, and obviously the cars got stuck somewhere. So, I mean, first reaction is, what fools?
What fools, yeah.
What the
What's
hell are
going
you
on?
doing?
Yeah.
And then you've also come across people littering, etc.
Yeah,
and all of that.
yeah.
So first reaction is that these jokers shouldn't be allowed there. Natural reaction. I love nature, so that's a natural reaction to me. So the silver lining to an ugly picture is that at least these jokers are getting there now. They have access. So let them reach there, have strong penalties to make sure that people like them don't come back. And if they want to come back, they learn a lesson, and then they come and tell people that this is what happened to them.
And simultaneously have the infrastructure required to support.
Yeah.
So that
Precisely.
they can be there without having to litter. So a fun conversation, and I think you gave a very good idea to the planners, and I think you should really pitch it, the idea of military tourism.
It's a great idea.
And but ironically enough, this has been considered. Anna, our producer, in her research has given me this brief about how the Arunachal Pradesh government has been considering for a while now to sort of promote tourism to some site in the state, which is a crash site for several planes lost by the US during the World War II.
Yeah. There is.
So this was like a historical tourism, but yours was But I would love that idea, by the way.
Oh, there should be some areas. Nobody is saying that take them to.
Of course, no one's saying कि जाके
operation
दिखाओ कि
room
this is
briefing,
China का post देखो वहाँ पे. Not like that, of course.
Some
but
storytelling around it and something.
Because that is what tourism is about, right? You
Yeah.
want to go and know about the place and
Yeah,
keep what's
exactly.
the legend about this place. Why is it so great? So fun chat. Abhishek, thanks once
I
again.
would actually open Galwan to if I had the brief to do so to tourists. I mean, world over, you see, there are cemeteries which are tourist
spots. Yeah.
because those cemeteries are where soldiers are buried.
Yeah.
We have it in Manipur and Nagaland. Second World War cemeteries are there, and man, they are important places if somebody is interested in military history.
Yeah. So let's see how this project pans out. It's very early days actually. I think barely a year since it was announced. And budget में तो आता है, allocation तो होता है, but you know the way things are.
No,
so
that's
it'll
what I
take a
said.
while.
Allocations are easy
to make and show.
decided and
Exactly,
shown.
yeah.
It's what you do with it
On the ground.
and what's the vision you have.
Yeah.
It can't be again a sarkari kind of boring kind of an idea. If you say vibrant, it should
Be vibrant.
be vibrant. Yeah.
And what make it vibrant is people. Like you said.
Yeah, I mean, have a concert, rock concert there. I mean, why not?
definitely.
Imagine some kind of a concert at Pengongsu.
Yeah. Great ideas you're dropping, by the way. I really hope someone from the Ministry of Home Affairs is listening to this podcast conversation and taking some tips from us. So thanks, Abhishek. Great chat, like always. Thanks to our listeners and viewers for joining us. Do let us know what you thought of this episode in the comments below. Or if you want, you can also drop a text to us. Message us at 8588 966 996. And a special thanks to our producer Anna Priyadarshini and soundmaker Kapil Dev Singh. That's it for this week's Defense Dose. For more, tune in next week. Till then, stay safe and do not cross any boundaries with your passport. Or you can actually visit one of these places if the roads allow.
Yeah.
It would be fun. Bye-bye.